I want to officially welcome everyone to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. We're really excited to present our Staffing World 2022 recap. And this is our attempt to bring to you the sights, the sounds, the lessons that we learned from our 2.5 days. Well, we were there for closer to 4 days, but our 2.5 days of sessions at this year's Staffing World Conference. So this year we had a team of 7 of us at the conference, and we're all going to be doing our best to share what we learned. And for those of you who have been to Staffing World before, you know that there are several keynote sessions. I'm going to cover a couple of those. There's a ton of breakouts. And so our team did go to a lot of the different breakout sessions. And so I'm personally really excited to hear what they learned because I missed most of them. Thankfully, it was in lots of unplanned, but very productive meetings with clients. And then we're also going to share some of our takeaways because we all had different conversations over the course of Staffing World with different people. I think there were a lot of lessons learned. So let's jump right in because we have a ton of content to cover. I will get started on the keynote. And our very first speaker on Tuesday of Staffing World was Magic Johnson, who talked about building world-class teams and the magic of winning. And I got to tell you, I had seen another professional athlete present about a month before I had the opportunity to see Magic, and it was a night and day difference. This other athlete had a handler. You weren't allowed to take pictures. You weren't allowed to ask questions that weren't scripted out in advance. It was really limited what you could do. And then Magic Johnson comes on, and not only is he a giant human being, but his personality is bigger than life. And his engagement with the audience was incredible. He also had lots of amazing success stories to share. And I just like this comment he made about himself. He said, Magic Johnson was a guy who dribbled a basketball and did his thing. Irvin Johnson is making an impact, and his business impact and his impact mostly on the African-American community has been unbelievable. But some of his lessons, his rules for success that we can all take home, play the right way. In other words, don't take shortcuts, don't cheat people, be honest, work hard. Make my teammates better. He said this is a lesson he learned in college basketball. He could be the best guy on the court, but if he was the best guy on the court, the team might not win. You had a championship team by making the people around you stronger. And as leaders, whether you're a senior executive, a business owner, you're a team leader, whether you're a branch manager, or just you want to be someone leading sales or recruiting your organization, the more that you can make the people around you better, the better it is for yourself, your teammates, your clients, and your candidates. He went into every game with this attitude of, we're going to win the game, but only if we believe we will win the game. And he gave a great story about a championship game they were going to play, and one of their key players had been injured, and the whole team was just assuming without this player, they couldn't win. And Magic said to his team, we're going to win this game, but we will only win if everybody in this locker room believes that we will win. And they took that belief, and Magic went on to get, and I forgot the point total, but it was 40 some odd points. He had a triple double in the game, and he basically set the tone, but his team made it happen, and they crushed the opponents to win that championship. The other thing that Magic said, and this is more on the business side, once I've done my homework and research, I can win anything. He doesn't show up to sales calls unprepared. He doesn't think he has to be the smartest person in the room. He wants people in the room who are way smarter than him, but he wants to learn from them. He does his homework. He learns about the clients he's selling to. He learns about the industries he's going into. He shows up prepared. And for Magic, he's the guy who is always on the practice court, taking extra shots. He's the first one there. He's the last one there. That practice, that research allows him to win anything. And if you're in sales, you're in recruiting, you're an owner of a staffing company, the more you know about your clients, your candidates, and especially going into this time of sort of economic uncertainty, the more you know about what your customers are going through on both the client and the candidate side and how you can help them, the more you're going to be a winner in 2023 and beyond. Hey, and this sort of fits that same message. I know my customer and I over-deliver for my customer. Retention is what matters to me. And he just goes to great lengths in every one of the stores he owns. He owns a lot of franchise locations of different organizations. He really tries to make sure that for his specific customer base, He provides exactly what they want, how they want it. He talked about owning Starbucks franchises, and he said, some of the things on the menu in a typical Starbucks don't fit my neighborhood. So I had to change some of the things on your menu to make sure I had the right products for my audience each and every day. All right, and as I said, he got out in the crowd, and I don't know if anybody from TriStar is listening in, but this is their president, Scott Fiore, who Magic pulled right out of his seat and made him stand there for about 5 minutes while Magic talked to the crowd, and made Scott run up and chest bump him in the middle of the presentation. Props to Scott for doing that. I know I would have been really nervous trying to go up to someone who's 6'7" and chest bump, but more great lessons. Competition. We all in the staffing industry, we face tons of competitors. They can be frustrating. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's really upset because he's got a competitor that's going in and dramatically undercutting his gross margins, really beating him up on price. But he said, it's forced me to rethink how we service our customers, how we can profitably compete with them at a lower gross margin. It forces you to practice, learn, and improve your game when you've got competitors. You need them to get better. Otherwise, you get complacent. Another great lesson, we all need mentors. At every stage in our lives, Magic Johnson, world-class athlete, he had a coach, he had mentors. World-class business person, he still has advisors to help him to be a better business person. And in every area of our lives, we have strengths and we have weaknesses, and mentors can help us capitalize on our strengths and find ways to overcome those weaknesses. Over delivery is what builds customer loyalty and word of mouth. In staffing, we all want clients to come to us. We all want candidates to come to us. But it's so competitive that we may not get as much word of mouth as we want. If we over deliver to our clients, and probably even more so to our candidates, it's going to reduce our need to spend money on job board advertising. It's going to reduce the difficulty of selling our services because people know who you are. They've heard about you. They're already positively predisposed to working with you. This is another comment I like. What does it take to get your teammates to have the discipline to succeed? Success is hard work. Magic was willing to put in the hours. You may be willing to put in the hours, but is everybody in your team willing to put in the hours? And if they're not, how can you, doesn't matter if you're the owner, frontline recruiter, how do you inspire the people, motivate the people around you to want to have the discipline to succeed? How do you show them what's in it for them? You yourself must be disciplined first. You have to understand what your teammates want to accomplish, and then show them how working together, by them being their best, you can help one another get to where you all want to go. And you also need to be very direct with people about what they need to do in order to be successful. He talked about doing a SWOT analysis. SWOT is an acronym: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And you should look at the strengths of your business and the weaknesses and the opportunities you have to grow and the threats coming in the next year. And how do you improve as a leader? And then Magic said he does it also as, how do I improve as a person, as a parent, as a husband? He actually does a SWOT analysis to be a better human. Love this phrase. I'm not a dwell on disappointment dude. I'm a person who asks the team what we're going to change to fix things. He doesn't go around looking for blame. He doesn't go around worrying about everything that went wrong. He just looks to, how can we take it as a lesson to get better for next time? And lastly, is a point I want to take home is, to be successful, don't try to do everything yourself. Get experts to provide advice so you don't make rookie mistakes. And a lot of times I think, especially for smaller business owners, there's a lot of pressure to do everything, wear all these hats, and we feel like we can't afford to get the expertise. Well, we pay to get that expertise through the School of Hard Knocks. So often, whether it's somebody who's going to provide training to your sales team, training to your recruiters, whether it's getting the ATS system in place that's going to give you the features you really need to compete, or it's getting somebody to provide expert marketing advice. You need the resources that help your team to perform at their best. So again, I was very inspired by Magic, tons of great lessons. And comparing that to the earlier professional athlete, such a refreshing break to hear someone who's just so inspirational and really cares about everybody, including the people in the audience he's talking to. All right, the second and the only other keynote we're going to cover was a fascinating panel discussion, straight talk from staffing CEOs. And these were big staffing companies. We had Bert Bean from Insight Global, Karen Fitchuk from Randstad North America, and Billy Milan from EmployBridge. And so I love hearing what the executives in really ginormous staffing companies have to say, because they can give lessons to the rest of the industry about where they're going and where the other companies should be focusing, where the opportunities are going to be. And in this case, they just had lots of really good advice. So first they were asked about where they saw opportunities for growth in staffing. And first and foremost was finding ways to create a bigger talent pool, help people to upskill. So can you do that in your business? Using data and digital transformation to identify growth opportunities, to really understand, when you say data, everything about how people are using your website, applying to jobs, their success and failures on the job, the information about your sales process. So you're looking to see and understand all of your performance metrics from the time you take a job order and place an ad till the time you're following up on a placement, till the time you're redeploying talent, to find ways to improve service and identify opportunities in the market that might be underserved. Specialization. These were giant companies that do everything, but they have sub-brands and they're getting more and more specialized so that their sub-brands can focus on specific types of talent. And for small to mid-sized companies, this is where you actually have a huge advantage, is being more specialized so that you can solve a specific problem for a specific type of employer or a specific type of job seeker better than anybody else in the world. Now, this is one that probably a lot of small companies can't get into, mid-sized companies maybe more so, but we're starting to provide advisory services, getting into true strategic workforce management, the higher level HR management, how companies build and manage global talent solutions. It's a C-level conversation, not an HR conversation. And if your staffing company can help figure out strategies for when to use temps, when to use direct hire, when to use freelancers, when to use onshore, when to outsource, and help your clients to figure that out, that's a for-fee, for-profit service that you have an opportunity to get into, that you're going to see some of the big staffing companies getting in with global employers. Digitization of staffing. We're seeing it in staffing platforms. We're seeing it in all the technology, the automation, the AI, the machine learning. How are you bringing these tools into your business to create opportunities for growth, to make you more efficient, to make you faster, to provide better client candidate experiences? And then helping people find gig and non-traditional work. It's something the staffing industry historically has not done. That's the Ubers of the world. But we're ideally suited as an industry to help people who want to find work by the shift or by a 4-hour assignment or by the project. If we can provide that match to non-traditional work, freelancers, typically gig work, that's 3 times bigger than the staffing industry. So we can quadruple the size of our industry if we can start to own helping people to find those kinds of opportunities. And then making the pie bigger by doing more to help both employers and job seekers in new ways. This is about creatively looking at the value of the services you provide, the value of your expertise, and thinking about new business models. Online staffing is one example of a new business model. If you went back 15 years, an MSP was an example of a new business model. What will be tomorrow's new business model? That's what these guys were challenging people to think about, is how do we take our expertise and solve new problems or old problems in new ways? There were a lot of lessons on culture, and big companies really depend on culture, but small companies thrive on culture as well. Bert Bean talked about culture being everything for us, and he shared an example of a year where they lost 1,100 recruiters in 1 year, and how that forced them to take a hard look at culture and the habits they wanted people to live in, and really codify those habits so it's something they lived in the organization. And through that cultural transition, they cut their annual turnover down below 13%, which in an industry staffing that averages more than 30 is pretty fantastic. Your values have to have the right product market fit. So you need core values, solid core values for your business, not just vanilla things like we've got integrity and we're trustworthy, but values that are more meaningful about how you're delivering value to your clients and your candidates. So there's a fit between what you believe in and what your ideal customers, your ideal clients and candidates want. As an employer, you need to own the mental health of our employees. The last few years, as everybody knows, have been tough on people. And mental health has been becoming a bigger and bigger area of discussion, thankfully, for all employers and in the general public. But people spend more time at work than anywhere else. And we have to, as employers, take more ownership of helping people deal with mental health challenges, to giving them more freedom to deal with those challenges, to giving them more flexibility in their work schedules. The old ways of working are probably gone forever because of COVID. Mental health is part of the new ways of working. There you go, turnover, 13%. That goes back to that first bullet. Like several of these CEOs made was you have to be intentional about culture. If you're not, culture happens, but you don't want it to happen by chance. Good culture starts with defining your organization's preferred behaviors, making sure everyone knows your values, your mission, your vision, and then you manage to those values. They're just not posters on the wall. They're things that you celebrate in meetings. They're things that you ask others about in performance reviews. They're things that you recognize and reward people for. You have to be really disciplined about reinforcing your culture to have the culture you want. And your leadership team has to become visible and transparent. I'm a fan of another guy named Richard Mulholland. He was not at Staffing World. He talks about leading loud. And he said the idea that CEOs and senior executives should kind of be quietly in the background, he said, it's dead wrong. We need to be loud in front of our organizations, leading the culture we want the organization to have, not the ones doing all the work. And the tone, sort of the same thing, is set at the C level, at the highest level. That's where culture comes from. Another thing they recommended is for new people is having a mentorship program to help people learn to live your culture, because most cultures, yeah, there's values, but then there's a ton of unwritten norms that people live by. And a mentorship program helps people to learn those norms faster and ensure that everybody's living those values top to bottom. All right, a couple of other lessons. We got some branding lessons. You know, I had to talk about those. Stop calling ourselves staffing companies because we want to do more. And this was actually controversial on the panel. One company said, we're going to be a talent company. We're eliminating the word staffing. And the other two said, no, we're not. Staffing is what we do. It's what people know us for. We're going to keep it. So this is a decision every company can make. When you use the word staffing in your branding, people know what you do, but it also puts you in a box based on what you do. When you choose a different word, you're not in that box, but now it's harder to educate the market about what you do and the value you provide. So these big CEOs viewed this differently. Really define your company's purpose and focus on how you're helping people improve their lives. So a lot of your branding is about not just, hey, we're a great staffing company because we deliver people fast and we've got this expertise, but it's about how we're changing lives for our employees, for the candidates we place, for the communities we serve. Own being a staffing company, but expand the definition of what that is. So that's kind of a corollary to the first bullet from the other companies. Managing the challenges we're facing right now as an industry, more communication. Big focus amongst these companies on preparing for a potential recession while continuing to build the team now. They're kind of straddling both sides of the economic fence. Be very clear in showing your plan to your people. Everybody needs to know where your company is headed and how you plan to get there. They need to know their role in helping you get there. Start looking for the opportunities that will exist in a downturn now and go on the offensive now. Actually, our next lunch with Haley is going to be about, it's entitled Prepare for Anything. It's exactly what we're going to be talking about in a few weeks, which is things that you should do now while the economy is still strong to prepare for whatever might happen in 2023. Okay, guys, there's the keynotes. Let's turn it over and let's now go through the breakout sessions. All right, so first up, Kathy.
Thanks, David. The first session I attended was called Building a Self-Managed Seven-Figure Recruitment Desk, $1 million biller by Suki Sodai, founder and president of Professional Selection and Elite Global Recruiters. In this session, she shared a lot of great information, but she focused on how recruiters and even sales managers could take ownership of their successes and build that seven-figure recruitment desk. She shared the traits of recruiters and sales managers and what they're doing to stand out from the crowd. So the first thing, she shared 5 things she talked about was establishing your authority. People know them and they understand their power, and they're providing real value for their clients. So they're focused more on what's in it for their audience instead of trying to get something for themselves out there. And they're focused on a specific niche, and they're not a jack of all trades. They're focused on one particular thing. The second thing she focused on was they know that people buy people, and they take the time to create and build their personal brand. So people may know your company's brand, but the client's not working directly with the company, they're working with you. So figure out which channel your audience resides on and share your brand there, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. No matter what the channel is, she says, make sure you have a strategy, you identify who you want to get a lead from, make sure you're adding value, that's the biggest piece, to your audience so that you're solving their problems. And then, of course, don't forget to tell your audience how to reach you. The third thing is utilize the power of teamwork. It's not a selfish thing, right? Sales and recruiting are 2 sides of the same coin. So obviously you need a successful team all around you, and you have to be able to know how to recognize that, how to motivate, and how to work with your counterpart. They understand that sharing is caring and that competition is external, not internal. The fourth thing is embrace metrics. And she says numbers tell a story. So while giving boss the metrics that their bosses want, she says also keep track of your personal metrics. She recommended number of unique candidates submitted, allocated revenue, and the longevity of a hire. And then lastly, which is really important, she said never stop learning. It's important to invest in your learning and development. Keep up to date in your industry, what's happening, what's new. She said, when you stop learning, you stop growing. And then don't rely just on your company to pay for your education, invest in yourself. And so that's that. It was a really great session, but I'll pass the mic over to Ryan.
Thank you, Kathy. So the first breakout session I attended Wednesday morning was 2022's top trending technology tools that you should have in your tech stack. And, they kicked it off with a walkthrough of some great resources for all ASA members that are right on the ASA website. If you log into americanstaffing.net, not the ASA Central one that I checked first, and then you do a search for essential elements of staffing technology, there's a chart there that they created with Talent Tech Labs that breaks emerging technologies into 5 stages. First one is source. Think about like job advertising, social networks, referrals. Then engage, it's candidate communication, automation, select. So those are assessment tools, interview process, stuff like that. Hire, so tracking systems, recommendation and reference solutions, and grow, which is sales technology. And so that's a cool way to see the ecosystem of what's out there. I mean, Staffing World this year, it was amazing the size of the vendor hall, the exhibit hall, and how many new solutions are out there. It was pretty overwhelming. So pretty cool to see those things broken out into those 5 stages. And they've also built a customized tech stack tool on the same website, americanstaffing.net. It's a bit buried, but they showed how to find it. If you do a search for it, tech stack tool, you'll be able to bring it up, and you can enter in your particulars for your staffing firm, things like your vertical focus, your volume of jobs, and it can produce recommendations to take a look at. So that's pretty cool stuff if you're a member. And then it was passed off to Tom Erb. He focused on sales technology. So he broke it into 3 sections. The first was geographic data analysis. So what's that? So if you start with the challenge of trying to understand whether there's enough demand available for a market that you might want to get into, or if there's enough talent in that given geo to justify expansion, these tools can help you answer that question. A couple of it stood out, eSpatial and Maptitude. Another solution that this can provide is if you're looking at, if you've got a number of salespeople and you want to find an equitable way to determine their sales territories, this kind of mapping technology can also help you understand what's the most equitable way to do that. So if you're assessing a new market or you've got that challenge with your sales team, these are a couple tools to check out. Second one was sales engagement. Most ATSs, CRMs, they aren't so great at aligning with a structured sales process, and they're usually not that great at driving engagement. They can be tough to adopt and a bit of a pain or a bit too complicated. So to get better engagement, there are some solutions out there. Tom shared one called Bluebirds that looks pretty cool. With that, not only does it integrate with LinkedIn and Outlook and a bunch of popular calendar platforms, but it also integrates your sales playbook and content management right in one platform. So the salesperson can be in that one environment, and it's really married to your sales process and whatever's unique about that. So that one might be worth checking out. And then lastly, he talked about gamification. So that's also about driving better engagement. Most companies, they've got commissions and KPIs, and that's great for achieving minimum goals. But if you want to make things more fun and hopefully more sustainable, gamification can be a great approach, especially for remote cultures nowadays, where everyone can have visibility playing against one another instead of feeling siloed and disconnected. And just for folks out there that are new to this term, the definition of gamification, it's taking something that's not a game and applying game mechanics to increase user engagement and hopefully also happiness and loyalty. They stick with it. So couple products, if you're using Zoho for your CRM or ATS, Zoho Motivator is one to take a look at. There's another option called Arcade. That one integrates with Slack, Salesforce, Microsoft Teams, and other platforms. And Tom called that the Chuck E. Cheese of gamification, because you earn coins that you can redeem. And Bullhorn users, there's one called Spinify that integrates really well with Bullhorn. That might be a good place to start. Switching over to David Francis from Talent Tech Labs, he reviewed a few more options that can all be seen in that essential elements section on ASA. But just to talk to a couple, staffing analytics. Cube 19 was acquired by Bullhorn, so that one works great with Bullhorn. But if you want analytics and you're not a Bullhorn user, Talent Wall is ATS agnostic. And then you talked about interview intelligence. This is pretty interesting. This is tech that actually listens in and monitors the interview to assess things like whether process is being followed, identifying what A recruiters are doing, top performers versus lower performing recruiters, and then making recommendations based on that. So that's pretty cool technology. And then speaking of interviews, Zoom fatigue is a very real phenomenon, and there is technology to address that. So if you want to make the switch back to phone-based interviews, there's a software out there called Qualify, or a platform called Qualify, Qualifi, that makes scheduling and running regular phone interviews super fast and easy. All right, so that was a lot of information in that session. I believe passing it over to you, Jenny.
Thanks, Ryan. The first session I got to attend was a panel discussion between staffing executives who revealed, in their opinion, what separates today's leading brands from others. And they broke down some of the latest trends we've seen over the last few years that have helped to reshape marketing. They started off by throwing out this question: why does the staffing industry tend to not spend much on marketing? Think about that for a second. The answer is this: marketing always came from corporate. Many companies had numerous branch locations and offices, and it was just too expensive to have a marketer at each location. They're also encouraging people to take advantage of the economy that is coming. They suggest merging two companies together, building for the future, put structure and leaders in place to grow and scale. And while you do that merging, make sure communication, because that's essential when you're merging two companies together. Be sure to establish what marketing does and doesn't do, and have people who are integrated in the business as well as marketing involved to support that effort. Hire for curiosity. Get people on your staff who aren't afraid to ask the questions, like, why does something work? Why doesn't something work? Hire for the attitude, I want to win. And then structure your onboarding program in a way that will allow them to succeed in the long run. When something goes wrong for your company, know and believe in your brand. Acknowledge and address it. Be authentic in your response and convey compassion. Marketing can help serve and drive the purpose, but be sure to lead with what is your purpose as a company. Align your business activities with the right initiatives and be sure to sell it all internally. When you focus on your purpose, everything else falls into place. And with that, we'll hear from Amelia now on managing organizational stress and beating the Great Resignation.
Thanks, Jenny. So the first session I attended was about managing organizational stress and beating the Great Resignation. So we've all heard of the Great Resignation, but what exactly is it? It's an ongoing economic trend where employees are voluntarily resigning from their jobs en masse, starting in early 2021. And actually, the U.S. Bureau of Labor estimates that in 2021, 47% of Americans voluntarily left their jobs, which is a really high number. So we all know this has led to many challenges in finding people to fill those jobs. And in fact, 60% of people plan to leave their job this year. So it's really hard to get people to stay in organizations. And why exactly is this happening? They talked about the 5 R's. So we have first, relocation. People maybe physically relocated during COVID, or they can't go back to the office, or they don't want to. We also have reconsideration. The pandemic made people really reconsider what's important in life and reconsider their careers. We see this especially in the medical field with nursing turnover. There's reshuffling. There's a lot of moving parts right now. It's making it tough on HR professionals. People are moving around very quickly and they want options. Remote, in-office, hybrid models, all those different things need to be considered. There's also retirement. There's no plan in place for so many people to leave the workforce this early and retire. So that affects leadership. And then finally, we have reluctance. People are feeling really uncertain as to what's to come. And all of this combined with the pandemic led to burnout, which is really the key component in the Great Resignation. And it's not just from work. We have all felt this, I'm sure, at one point since COVID, but we're feeling burnout at work, at home. We're also constantly connected. We're lacking boundaries in life. Michael Levitt, who was the presenter, called his iPhone his iBinky. He says that we're all getting too numb to burnout because we rely so heavily on that instant gratification from those notifications that we don't even realize the negative impact it's having on all of us. So what can we do about it? First of all, it's absolutely crucial that you have boundary conversations with your employer, your team, your family about workloads and responsibility. These should be open conversations and ongoing conversations, especially as leaders. Sometimes it can be hard for us to see how much we're giving to our teams, particularly to our top performers. So having these conversations regularly can really help. You also need to examine your time and find a workflow that works for you, and make sure you communicate that with your team to reinforce those boundaries. You also want to limit distractions. Definitely easier said than done, but turn off your iPhone notifications, put on Do Not Disturb, maybe turn off LinkedIn notifications, after 5 o'clock, something like that. That can really help. And last but not least, prioritize self-care. It's not just a buzzword. It's not just a trend. It's really important that we take care of our mental health. That's going to help greatly with stress and culture. So all of these things can really be beneficial. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Jenny.
All right, the next session I got to attend was a panel discussion on the state of the staffing industry's mergers and acquisition market and the best practices for preparing and executing those transactions. Having just recently lived and breathed it, their information was extremely timely. Tom offered this remark right off the bat. If your business is doing good, the market is good. But you need to do M&As if you're wanting to innovate, expand, and grow. The staffing industry is in a great space for this because pricing for top assets continues to be very high. Then they abruptly switched gears and went into best practices for preparing and executing transactions. Tom likened the process very much to a 9-month MBA course. You get immersed in the organizational transformation, IT, finance, specifically accounting. They absolutely recommend hiring the best professionals for your deal. Get the best investment banker you can. Get a specific M&A lawyer, someone who's a problem solver and who can get the job done. Establish your executive team that will stay once the merger has taken place. Sign management retention agreements to incentivize key employees to stay not only through the closing, but also thereafter once the merger has been done. It's really, really, really important to know, like, and trust your key business professionals. And then looking beyond people, they said, know your business. It should go without saying, but know your critical business details. Invest in your financial function. Know how your business performs. Where do you make money? How has it changed over time? Why? Do your research and ask the questions. Talk to people who have done deals and ask them, where did you goof up along the way? Go through your predictions each quarter and understand why you're meeting or missing your numbers. And finally, borrow other people's brains. Despite the competitiveness of the industry, many people are generous with sharing what they've learned and experienced. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kathy now, who will talk to us about Career Wallet.
Thank you, Jenny. I attended a panel discussion that introduced a career wallet, the digital transformation of recruitment. And one of the reasons I attended this session is because I've never heard of a career wallet before, and I wanted to see what was new in recruitment technology. And I thought it was really cool and innovative for us to share that with you today, just in case you were like me going, what is a career wallet? A career wallet is an app by Velocity that you install on your phone or a mobile device, and it offers a simple, reliable, and a private way to manage your professional profile and then share with third parties when needed. It allows the ability to claim digitally signed education and career credentials from your work, school, license issuers, and certification providers. And you can store them privately, and then you have control over who you get to share that with. So the base of creating a career wallet is trust, and how companies can improve how they can trust everything that a candidate shares with them. And then the recruiter or the company can really focus on the fit and the filling of that particular role. It was also created to improve the way we connect people with work. And using this app, they believe, is going to, one, improve trust because people can't tamper with credentials. And the proof that they're providing is signed by the issuers of those credentials or certifications or education. It'll, two, save time by removing repeated, duplicated work of making phone calls and verifying accurate information. And then number three, in turn, the time to fill will reduce because you can focus really on that fit instead of verifying all the information. Four, it provides a better candidate experience. Time is of essence, and it gives them more control of their personal information, and they can't tamper with it. And this rolls out to other companies and industries that they can share this with other employers as they move forward. Again, once the candidate puts all the information into this digital wallet, they can share it with whoever they want. So with this new technology, the staffing industry is coming together to make the process of connecting people with work better, easier, and more efficient. That's what a career wallet is. And I'm going to hand this over to Amelia.
Thanks, Kathy. So the next panel I attended was about cultivating an organizational culture of inclusion through empathy and inclusion. So they started off with, why do we need empathy at work? Well, as staffing professionals, our mission should be to expedite employment for everyone all across the board. And really, empathy is the best way to connect your workforce and improve company culture. Magic Johnson even said during his keynote, empathy is a choice. And since workforces are feeling particularly disconnected nowadays, we have to actively choose empathy every single day. So diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. One silver lining of COVID is that it did enhance the process of diversity and inclusion by changing the way we traditionally hire. It's estimated that 26% of American adults have disabilities, and about 80% of those disabilities are considered invisible or non-apparent. So it's really important that we keep that in mind. Workplace inequities tend to exist because of misinformation, fear of the unknown, lack of preparation. As humans, we just kind of tend to make assumptions about someone and their strengths and weaknesses without actually getting to know what those are. And that was apparent in the traditional hiring process. So what can we do? We need to have a more empathetic approach to screening candidates. Once we can understand what their challenge is, the entire interview process and the way we evaluate their skills will change. We need to look at things like transferable skills, non-traditional experience, qualifications that include strengths and passions. It's also really important to build a connective community within work using talent, peers, mentors, managers. It's not just about bringing in talent, it's about understanding the talent that you have, and having a solid community like that can really help your talent feel understood. Lastly, we want to consider how universal design best practices could positively impact your entire organization. They gave the example of automatic doors. If somebody is physically disabled and unable to open a door, the automatic door feature is a great solution. Similarly, if an abled person could open a door, but maybe their hands were full and they weren't able to open a door at that time, the automatic doors could benefit them too. So thinking about how these different solutions could impact everyone across the board in a positive way. And with that, I'm actually going to pass it back to Jenny.
Thank you. So the next session I attended was led by Ron Hetrick, and he took us through this difficult labor market that we're all trying to navigate. And he provided helpful strategies everyone can implement to help weather the storm. No matter where you look, every segment has been hit by the labor market or lack thereof. Everyone is in pain, whether it's the healthcare industry, manufacturing, the restaurant space, everybody's been hit. It's a crazy time we're living in right now, and it's not good to walk around not knowing what's going on. It's a fact, this is a terrible space and it's not a blip. But without the context, you might blame your team. If there aren't any people to put to work, you're not going to place any people. You can only be as good as the economy around you. Clients want to know what it's going to take to keep people in the job. And he offered this helpful tip. We need to present data with regard to the 4 C's and the 5th critical C. What are they? Clear data. It has to be easy to explain. Concise. Only show data that directly matters. Contextual. Is this a data point good or bad historically? And comparative. Is this data good or bad compared to other markets or other occupations? The critical 5th C is compassion. When staffing companies help their clients, everyone wins. The client, the staffing company, and the worker. The goal when using data is to get your client into a place where success can happen. So keep in mind that the labor force participation is not recovering. There are 10.1 million job openings. This is unprecedented. 5 million people have opted to currently stay out of the labor force. Job openings are not getting filled because very few people are left looking for work. Roughly 6 million of the 10.1 million open jobs in America need to be filled by people without a college degree. So I just threw out some numbers, some data points. What Ron encouraged us to do was to take the data, but mesh it with your own anecdotes. Don't ever give anecdotes on their own without any data. And don't just give data without any context. Talk about what you're experiencing, put the 2 things together that gives you a competitive advantage, your view of the market. People want your heart, and that includes marrying the outside information that you present with what you're feeling on the inside. And with that, we'll hear from Amelia now on best practices in navigating remote work.
Thanks, Jenny. So this was an interesting session. So remote work has really changed everything, as we know, and David mentioned at the beginning, it shows no signs of slowing down since 2020. We learned that we can get work done without being in the office, but what exactly does that mean for employers legally? At this time, OSHA doesn't hold employers liable for employee home offices and doesn't expect any worksite evaluations, but that is subject to change. So remote WSEs was kind of the main subject of this session. And as of right now, obviously, OSHA still requires worksite evaluations and a safe work environment. And some remote first companies have been hosting phone WSEs where they rely heavily on video recordings and images and technology essentially to have a paper trail to prove that things are safe. Like I said in the beginning, this is all subject to change. So it's really important that you stay fluid and prepared. They recommend that you create a home-based worksite policy, and this should clearly outline the requirements of a safe work from home environment. Think of it as like a checklist for all home-based work sites, what you would want there, what would make it safe versus unsafe. This also includes your expectations of company wear and tear. You need to consider, if pets chew through cords, if maybe a kid borrows the computer for school and breaks it or spills something on it. Consider apartment buildings. If you have someone in New York City and they're on the 30th floor, do you have accommodations in place to get them all their monitors and equipment up there safely without damage or injury? So all these kinds of things need to be taken into account. As I said before, it's certainly possible that remote worksite evaluations will become mandatory in the future. So it's just something we have to be prepared for. And in the case of a major accident, you'll always want to be prepared to make a physical visit. And now I'm going to pass things over to Ryan.
Thanks, Amelia. So rounding out Wednesday afternoon, we had a really lively panel discussion on making the most of your tech stack investment. Panelists were led by Todd Bevel, CEO of Integrity Staffing Solutions, along with Bruce Morton from Allegis, Lauren Jones from Leap Consulting, and Rob Mann from Kylo Partners. And what was really cool about this format is they passed out note cards to the audience ahead of the session to get audience questions, and then fielded them throughout the hour. And the questions were really broken up into three categories. The first was assessment, really the first stage. And Todd from Integrity spoke to three key areas under assessment. The first being the question of build versus buy. And it's funny, this is so timely because I had a client ask me earlier that day at our booth whether they should build a mobile app. And of course, it begged the question of what's it for and the goals of that. But also, we talked about the challenges of getting it improved on the App Store and Android Store, and whether it would be better than a progressive mobile app or a mobile site that does the same thing but doesn't require a candidate to go download it somewhere. And that's basically where Todd and the panel landed. Only build if you absolutely have to. If you can, buy it. That's the right solution because building is a pretty massive undertaking. Next, Bruce talked about really defining ROI, and this made me think quite a bit about how oftentimes we just assume we know what ROI means without actually digging into what it actually is. Is it giving people more time? What are they going to do with that time? Is it just cost reduction? Is it client retention? You need to know what you're going to measure and how before you can assess what to buy and what it's going to do for you. There's revenue generation and there's revenue preservation, and they're both really important. And he gave a great piece of advice: record your demos and ask specifically, hey, what's live today and what's in beta? I thought that was a really important suggestion, because I've certainly heard the complaints on the back end when those things are unclear or seem like a surprise after you've bought. Really good tidbit. Next was implementation and adoption. So this section was most relevant to the room because when they were polled, most of the attendees were in this phase. And first, adoption, it starts with getting buy-in from your team during the purchase process, not after. Rob talked about how culture really impacts implementation because it's all about what you do. You really have to build culture around the tech by explaining why it's going to help them win, and keep telling your team how it's going to help them win. He suggested identifying your change champions or your innovations team. Those are the people that are going to poke holes in the process before you roll it out to everyone. And Todd added that you really want to avoid the mistake of dodging the most difficult people. That might seem like the intuitive thing to do, but you actually want to start with them, because if you can satisfy your most difficult people, you can satisfy everyone. Also, without getting data and documentation from the team, automation is not possible. So you absolutely have to have the buy-in. And he also spoke about having micro training to deal with shorter attention spans. So maybe short videos that are asynchronous, that act like just-in-time learning modules, instead of having things that feel really laborious and lose folks' attention. And lastly, the question of configuration versus customization wasn't even a question. It was a unanimous vote in favor of configuration. They really pounded the point that although we're all unique, you aren't that unique. So, customization, it's really going to limit you going forward. You build your own mousetrap and, just can really trap you later on. Whereas configuration, if you are using a standard solution, that's what's going to keep you in a position to benefit as that solution evolves and grows. And with that, over to you, Kathy.
It would help if I took myself off mute. Thank you, Ryan. My last panel discussion was around building the culture within your firm. Salo, AMN Healthcare, and Eastridge Workforce Solutions shared what they do to engage their teams to build culture within their companies. They opened the discussion by sharing that less than 30% of employees at most companies are fully engaged. And I thought that was a really interesting statistic. And I found this session very, very interesting. And I wish that I could share everything that they said, but they shared so much information in a very short 45 minutes that we actually did run over in time. And for the sake of this call, because I know we're running out of time here, I'm going to attempt to highlight each company and their strategies. So wish me luck. Salo was presented by Lisa Breznick, and she shared their mission to connect and empower people to make a difference. Some of the strategies they did was make sure that you involve your employees in everything. Let them be part of the process from the beginning to the launch. She said, get their fingerprints all over it. Create a common company vision and not just a leadership vision. And everybody feels involved. Help everyone understand the why of what your company is doing, what they are doing, and how it affects the company. Salo found that when you empower people and get them involved up front, they're seeing the possibilities and they're also moving the roadblocks before they can even happen. Every year, Salo has company and team offsite meetings to bring people together, to collaborate, to connect, to inform, to get input, also to clarify each team's contribution to overall success. And then they celebrate a lot. And then they launch the upcoming year's plan. Lisa had shared that when you have people understand where you are going, why you're going there, how you're going to get there, and what their role is, they feel like they're part of something bigger and impactful, which builds a stronger and more engaged culture. The next one was AMN Healthcare, and Christina Miner shared that they talked about elevating an inclusive culture during the seasons of acquisition and growth. So they focused on talking about how they integrated all AMN healthcare businesses and making sure every employee was connected to the purpose and that they felt heard. They had the intention of elevating an inclusive culture and achieved their goals by capitalizing on employee resource groups that were focused on different cultures, backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. And at AMN Healthcare found that people felt heard and that they felt like they had a space that allowed them to identify elements of diversity to them, and they connected with other people. They created 10 employee resource groups: mental health, wisdom, insight, sincerity, and experience, LGBTQ, Latin American, loving your bodies, veterans enterprise, power and value, parents and caregivers, diversity and equality, Black women in leadership roles. Really just gave a great way for people to connect within. And so not only did they focus on their internal culture, but they also published that information for everyone to see, which I thought was pretty cool. The last one, Seth ran out of time, so he quickly went over some things, but I thought it was really neat because at Eastridge Workforce Solution, he talked about creating the culture of ownership and having an ownership mindset. So they were in business for about 50 years, and this came about building on a succession plan. So when their owner passed away in 2017, companies were calling them interested in taking on Eastridge as an asset. But the family believed that the best way to preserve the culture and protect the values and give back to the employees that have been there for years and even some cases decades, it was really important for them to become an employee-owned company. And that just changed everybody's mindset, and it helped actually propel their growth. Some strategies that they focused on were they streamlined and consolidated all of their brands so that they were all under one umbrella, so the Eastridge Workforce Solutions brand. And in order to reach their goal from going from 250 million to 500 million, And also providing equity for their employees, they had to make sure they had the right team and the right individuals in place. So although it was a difficult decision for them because they're very loyal to their employees, they did have a very clear vision of climbing the mountain together, but they actually hired outside candidates for some high-level roles, CFO, COO, CMO, and also some management roles. Some of the things they do ongoing is they measure their results every single week. They have an executive meeting where they're focusing on 3 company initiatives and solving those issues. They're reporting on individual goals that align with the company or the division goals, and they're reviewing results achieved, progress towards certain goals, and the outcomes of any issues. Doing this allows them to create a trusting environment where people are comfortable in saying, hey, I need help. And they found that issues are solved very, very quickly. They have a true commitment to their culture. And what I mean by that is the very first thing that they did was they had everybody in the company read a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And it immediately helped everyone understand their role in the company and that their role serves a greater good. They rolled out principles of servant leadership by implementing a DISC profile, which is a personality tool. And they shared results with everybody so everybody could understand how to communicate with each other. They moved to a situational leadership model that helps with manager and employee communication, where basically it allows a manager to evaluate an employee on a task performance and then guides them on how to provide support or direction that is needed. They perform 360s, which is an evaluation process that allows everyone to pretty much evaluate people, rate them, and give feedback so everyone's aware of what they need to work on. They're coaching for success. They use something called Eastridge DNA. This helps them identify what they believe makes the best employees and partners for their company. So everybody takes a 5-characteristic open book test, and then they're reviewed by a DNA committee. This enabled their turnover to be really, really low, and then also get the right people in the right place. There is a town hall every other week where they're sharing numbers, so there's no surprises. They created an advisory board to keep everybody informed at all levels, and they implemented skip level meetings where a manager meets directly with an employee without the manager in place. There was so much information shared. All 3 companies were doing really awesome things for their culture, but my main takeaways from hearing all 3 situations is you'll get more from focusing on the people and the things that will cause the numbers to go up as opposed to focus on just the numbers. And then it's important to develop a culture to empower your people and allow them to feel heard and part of something bigger. Whew, that was a lot. Now over to you, Susan.
Thanks, Kathy. You're right. That was a lot. My head is spinning just listening to the recap. I can't imagine what it was like to sit in. If you joined a few minutes early, you probably heard David say that a few of us didn't attend as many sessions as we wanted to because we found ourselves in unplanned conversations, which was great. But I was able to sneak into the inspirational staffing stories and speed networking. This is a really unique session, probably one of the most unique I've been to at a conference. And how they had it structured was there were 3 staffing industry leaders who told their story, and then we all broke off into tables of networking. So when I was preparing for this, it was a little difficult for me to decide how to present because who am I to pull out the most important part of someone else's story. So what I decided to do was just share with you my favorite quote from each of them. The first one is from Kendra Cato, who is the director of enterprise strategy at Bullhorn. And one thing she said that I absolutely loved was every night she thinks back and says, what was the moment today you felt the most alive? And this is where she gets her inspiration from. The next speaker was Aaron Copeland, who is the CEO of Align Staffing. And I loved it when he said, don't be afraid to lean into your scars. We all have them and use them to your advantage. And then the next speaker was Michelle Sims, who is the CEO of Upro. And she said, purpose is your power, not your problem, which I absolutely loved. And it made me go, and I can see my panelists and a few of them all went, so really something to think about. And then the speed networking, like I mentioned, they broke us into different tables and they had a group of questions for us to answer for each other. Everything from how did you get into the staffing industry, which as you all know, no one sets out to get into the staffing industry. You kind of fall into it one way or the other. But my table only got through 2 questions because we broke the rules, and we didn't break off into groups of 2. But it was a great experience. I really hope that Staffing World has an entire session next year of just speed networking, because it makes it easy for people who are hesitant to come up to other people and initiate that conversation. It kind of forces you into that conversation in a very safe and comfortable space. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jenny.
Thanks, Susan. The last session I got to attend was had the title of "Why is Change So Hard? How can you make it easier for your teams?" It was led by Daniel Masada, and he provided a presentation to an absolutely overflowing room. So we know this is a topic that is top of mind for a lot of people. A quote by this LinkedIn CEO goes like this: "Even if you're not changing your job is changing on you." It's a pretty powerful statement. 70% of change initiatives inside of companies fail because 72% of employees resist change. So what is the worst possible outcome of this change failure? The answer is severance pay, $100 billion to be exact. It's spent in the US each year. This is the ultimate expression of sucking when it comes to change. Companies should have helped their employees see where the company is going. They should have helped their employees improve their skills. They didn't, and so there's severance pay. Change sounds easy, and it sounds right if you're at the CEO level. There's 35,000 decisions that are made each day at work by all of us who are employees. They could be micro decisions, but they're still decisions. Like, do I send that invite now? Do I click on this field? What should I do next? 1,200 times during a given day, we switch between apps. So Outlook to Chrome to the next app. And on any given day, employees always have a lot to do. Then they're asked to drive successful change in their workplace. So how do companies help with this? The answer is to prepare their employees for change. Position it so that they know that it's good for them and their careers. Good change starts with your most valuable asset, which is your people. Teams need the time and attention to truly understand why the change is happening and how they can be a successful part of it. Way too often, this isn't the case within companies. So we'll leave you with this question today. How are you leading change in your organization? You can keep that thought, but we'll turn our attention now to lessons learned from Staffing World 2022 from each of us. Go ahead, David.
All right. Thank you all. And as you mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of content to go through. We're skimming the surface of all these sessions of 2.5 days worth of content, but now we're going to bring it all home and we'll quickly recap with some of the lessons each of us took out of this year's Staffing World Conference. So I'll kick things off. So for me, I spent a lot of time asking people what's going on in their business and what are they forecasting for next year. And the common answer I got was, I don't know. Some people said business is booming. Some people said it's softening. Some people said it's already tough. But what I found to be a universal truth was the companies that I know that are the best run and the smartest CEOs I talk to, they're planning for the worst now and hoping for the best in 2023. This may sound a little self-serving, but marketing, we've been doing this for 26 years. And once upon a time, we used to be on a soapbox telling staffing companies, you need to market. And now it's become a core function on par with sales and recruiting in terms of driving sales and recruiting success. But most of the companies we've been talking to are trying to do too much with too few resources and putting too much on the shoulders of people who very often, I know Jeff from our team will say the side of the desk marketers who have to juggle 6 other things while trying to be the company's go-to marketing person. And my last takeaway is Magic Johnson was an incredibly impressive individual. I personally want to go rewatch his presentation. So if you went to this to Staffing World, log into ASA website. Ryan gave out the URL, americanstaffing.net. There's a place to log in and rewatch the presentation. If you didn't, just go back to the bullet points that I listed earlier, because there were so many nuggets of wisdom that can be applied to every day and every job that we do. All right, Jeff.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of my time, just talking and asking about the marketing side of things, and obviously automation is at the heart of what I do. But what's interesting is I think for the 6th year in a row, digital transformation and automation continue to be at the forefront. And I say it pretty funny, but it seems like these are the main themes, and maybe interchange candidate engagement with candidate experience, but still staffing firms are trying to figure out how to use them. I think what's actually nice now is that adoption is to a point where they are using them. They're just trying to figure out how to optimize what's going on. So it just continues to be there. The second point is, no matter who I talked to, and had great conversations with, companies that had marketing teams, a person, function, outsource, they still don't know what the right marketing mix is. And throw in uncertainty, throw in what's going to happen in 2023, marketing strategy planning, they just don't know. And I think, I would always liken it to, figure out where your business is going to go, or at least try to give a great, directionally give a great, I guess, just strategy or plan, and then figure out the marketing mix. But companies still are trying to figure out, is it in-house? Is it, outsourced? What do I want to do? So I think that's really interesting right now in what's happening. And then lastly, I think those staffing firms that continue to market, and had a lot of them that said, no matter what, we're going to market. Digital marketing's core. I think David mentioned that. We are going to continue to market in some way. And I think those that do choose that option are going to win. So those were the 3 that I was talking to. I think, Ryan, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So, I wanted to just talk to a quick point for a session I attended, but didn't cover here for time. But one that I feel is really important: military vets and their spouses are a great untapped source of talent. If you've ever worked with anyone with military experience, you know that typically they've got grit, they have leadership, they have discipline, they're doers. The jobs that are potentially a great fit are not limited to the ones here, but when you think about IT, cybersecurity, operations, engineering, HR, forklift operators, manufacturing, all these opportunities, and this is an underserved talent pool, and you might get a big tax credit for placing these people. So there's just such a win-win here. It's pretty crazy to think that so many of them are having challenges finding these opportunities. The second was that Staffing World was amazing this year. Record attendance, and the energy was really through the roof. I may have had some memories of prior years where we were at Vegas, and there's so much entertainment pulling people in other directions that we don't get quite the level of engagement that we might get where we're somewhere that is really far away from all the fun. This year, it was absolutely not like that at all. The engagement was phenomenal. The conversations, the networking was really top notch. And then lastly, sadly, about 7 or 8 people came to the booth to me and told me about the same story about their experience with programmatic job ad spend software. We're working, and I don't want to pick on a particular vendor, but there was an approach to put a square peg in a round hole. It's all in how this technology is used. We at Haley Marketing have seen it used very successfully. If you're placing light industrial and office clerical candidates, it's not about finding some blind network that's going to do better than Indeed and Zip. Oftentimes, it's about just managing your Indeed and Zip spend a lot more effectively than you do today. And there's some great ways to do that. So when programmatic is used the wrong way, it can be a really frustrating failure. When it's used the right way, there's still a lot of opportunity for success with that. And Susan, I think you're up.
All right, thanks, Ryan. So my first takeaway was one good thing to come out of the pandemic is video calling versus regular phone calling has made it easier to get closer to clients. I personally have experienced this, and I talked to a lot of people at the conference. When I asked them, they said the same thing. So one benefit, I guess. Second thing was there's a lot of pride in the industry with all the people we help every day, but we really don't do a great job educating the outside world of the good we do and our value. My third one, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, Magic Johnson is an impressive business person. I won't go into it anymore. I think we've all covered it good enough already. And then my last one is, I should know better, but when staying in a hotel in Las Vegas, especially when you are on your feet all day, ask for a room close to the elevator. All right, turning it over to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Susan. This was my second Staffing World. Really enjoyed it. Excited that it was in Vegas. I took away there's a ton of energy and a growth mindset throughout staffing. Broken record here, Magic Johnson. Wow, amazing, amazing, amazing. The nugget of wisdom that stayed with me, and I think someone said it throughout the call, is, are you willing to change in order for your company to get better? I think you could apply that in really any area of your life. That will stay with me for a long time. If you have the chance to watch the replay, get ready to be engaged and to smile. And then also, if you have a chance to see him live, just be prepared because he does chest bump people. So it's really exciting and fun. Again, it wasn't just him. All the attendees brought the energy, the passion, the enthusiasm to learn new solutions to address their current challenges. And I found that a lot of them had a difficult time choosing between sessions that were happening concurrently. So that's really cool. And then, of course, relationships. I love face-to-face meetings. So if you ever see me at one of these events, come talk to me. I love it. Love meeting new people. I love actually spending time with my existing clients, and hanging out in Vegas with them was awesome. And then also I realized that the rescue dog section is really not for me because it's the second time I tried to adopt a puppy and take it home to New Jersey. That was it. So handing that off to Jenny.
Thanks, Kathy. This is my first Staffing World experience, and it's true what they say, Staffing World is where the staffing community comes together. The conference provided valuable insights and solutions for everyone who attended. I also came away with the fact that it's important to invest in company culture to improve productivity. Equally important to the success of your staffing business is the well-being and retention of employees. Several sessions emphasize this. Another thing that everyone knows but was reiterated is always maximize your networking opportunities. It's a great way to strengthen relationships, identify business opportunities, and learn about industry trends. And finally, it wouldn't be right if I didn't end with something other than Magic Johnson. This quote is what I took away from his session. Are you willing to change in order for your company to get better? But beyond that, not just your company. Think about it. It can be applied to your family, your community, wherever you're involved. Are you willing to change in order for those around you to get better? And I think Millie is the only one left.
Last but not least. So my key takeaways started with Magic Johnson. It was a really inspirational talk. He talked a lot about knowing your customer and over delivering to your customer. Just kind of went along with a lot of the themes I heard about empathy, making people feel valued and heard, and understanding your customers and their needs can obviously lead to better retention. And again, going back to choosing empathy. The power of human connection was also very apparent. There was great energy. It was a week full of awesome networking opportunities. And the face-to-face conversations always feel more genuine and authentic than anything over email. And I did have a couple conversations with people where, as Susan mentioned, video is one of the great things to come out of the pandemic. So even utilizing video to improve those sort of face-to-face conversations, if you will, is a great way to do that. And lastly, the future is unknown. The world's changing. We don't really know what to expect next. We think that we have some predictions, but you really never know. But the good news is that we're all in the same boat, and we're all going through it together. So with that, we're going to pass it back to David for final questions.
And we have reached the end. Thank you, everybody. We had a feeling this one might go over by a little bit. Appreciate you hanging out. But if you do have questions, marketing, not marketing related, staffing world related, please don't be shy. Reach out to us, 888-696-2900. Shoot us an email, info@haleymarketing.com. Goes to a bunch of us here. We are more than happy to help. And a couple of last housekeeping items. If you have not already taken advantage of our offer to have your website reviewed, kudos for sticking around to the end of the presentation, because you can go to this URL, haleymarketing.com/website review, and we will show you through a 30-point analysis how to get more people responding to your website. So they're already going to your website. We're going to get more of them to take action, more people applying to jobs, more people contacting you about your services. With this 30-point review, we'll give you lots of ideas. And if you have not taken advantage of all of the on-demand recordings from our summer event, they're still available, haleymarketing.com/smart ideas 2. We have 14 quick sessions, unlike today's long session, 14 25-minute talks from some of the smartest minds in staffing to help in all areas of your business. And last but not least, I mentioned earlier, our next webinar is called Prepare for Anything. And we are scheduled for Thursday, December the 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So please join us, and we'll be talking about strategies to get ready for whatever comes at the staffing industry in 2023. From all of us at Haley Marketing Group, I want to thank you all for being part of today's webinar, and we hope to see you at a future Lunch with Haley event. Take care.